Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is Digital Learning Today, episode number 30, a show for educational technology enthusiasts and digital learning leaders. On today's show, we're going to be talking to the authors of a brand new book that I am excited about. I had a chance to peruse this thing and check it out. It's all called Personalize, Meeting the Needs of All Learners. We're going to learn how to start with your why, how to build that culture, and how you guys can have a fantastic school year coming up. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Don't forget to check out the ending of this. There's going to be something special for you guys at the end of this. If you haven't had a chance to check out everything over at teachercast.net, we have had a ton of great content coming out all around the ISTE conference. 15,000 educators all got together in Denver, Colorado to celebrate student achievement and teacher professional learning. Check out all the great stuff over at teachercast.net/YouTube today. And of course, like and subscribe for more information. I want to bring on today two guests. One of them I have known from literally the beginning of TeacherCast. As you're listening to this, we're actually celebrating our 13th anniversary. And a long time ago, I reached out to this kind of guy on Twitter, this kind of celebrity, if you will. I know he doesn't like that term, but this kind of celebrity from my home state of New Jersey, and said, would you like to come on my show? And the guy said yes. Well, I've been following his coattails ever since. And I want to bring on today my good friend, Mr. Eric Sheninger. Eric, how are you today? Welcome to TeacherCast.
Jeff, I'm doing great, but I'd be remiss if I didn't share a fact. You know, everyone today has a podcast, but who was doing it before everyone else? You. And it makes me so proud that we're both from the Garden State. Whether you prefer Springsteen or Bon Jovi, it doesn't matter. I'm Bon Jovi. But Jeff, you know, thank you for ushering in this era of podcasting, because you know what? People can learn so much from you. It's an honor to be here this year.
Eric, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you have supported me on over the last, I'm going to keep saying this, 13 years. And today you have brought a colleague with you. Tell us a little bit about our next guest today.
Well, listen, she's going to introduce herself, but so many people are good at talking the talk. Everybody says what they're doing. It sounds awesome. But then walking the walk, that's not room for growth. Nicki is walking the walk, and she is here because when I was fortunate enough to coach in her school the past 2 years, the things that I saw in her school far surpassed things that I've seen at scale anywhere else in the world. So Nicki, take it from there.
So, yeah, that was kind of how we met. When we met, we were at a school that we were both working at the time, and they introduced us. And so he had the opportunity to hear me speak to a specific school board and share my why and my vision and my beliefs towards personalization. And so after, he pulled me back and he was really impressed with everything I said, but he did that same little line. He's like, well, you can talk the talk. Can you walk the walk? So I was like, then come to my school to see. So that's kind of how we started our friendship. Obviously, I've listened to him speak and stuff and realized that we were two peas in a pod and had the same vision and our philosophies aligned. But yeah, he challenged me. And so I took that challenge and said, come out to Quest Academy in Utah. And then, you know, we've been besties ever since. But I have actually been in education 23 years. So I've taught elementary, kindergarten, first, second, third. As well, I was an instructional coach for 4 years to work with teachers, and then 8 years in a secondary setting as a principal. But I've loved every single minute of it.
You know, I love that story. I was curious on how a guy from New Jersey met somebody from Utah and put it all together. But guys, thank you so much. Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh on today to talk all about their book, Personalize, Meeting the Needs of All Learners. And I got to start off right now. Personalize. I think that's probably the best topic of a book I've ever seen. And coming from an instructional coaching background also, Nicki, making learning something that's individualized for everyone is imperative, especially today. I still believe that we need to do group learning and, you know, whittle things down a little bit. But Nicki, what is it about creating personalized learning that is so important?
Just identifying each student as an individual, identifying their strengths and their weaknesses and their interests, as well as identifying where they're at based off their data. So when you look at all those different aspects as a teacher or a school, providing experiences for them that they will be engaged in and that will actually challenge them at their own level. Does that make sense? So just really getting to know each person, at our school, whether it be teacher or student. As a leader, you just need to get to know all of your staff, all of your students, identify their strengths, figure out what you value about them, and then take time to personalize how you work with each individual.
But Nicki, I'm going to stop you here. I had 190 kids last year. How do you do that?
You move yourself away from the front of the classroom. So you can't be, it has to be student-centered. Once you move yourself from that front of the classroom and you provide through digital learning, say flipped classroom, or create playlists, or create choice boards, and give a variety of different ways for kids to learn, that frees you up to be able to walk around, use instant data that you're receiving through the practices and the assignments that they're doing, to where you can actually sit down, have a conversation with them, provide them feedback, get to know them. So the trick really is just moving away from that front of the classroom. Then you have a full class period to meet the needs of those kids and get to know them.
Yep. And Jeff, I'm going to jump in a minute, because I think it's important to talk about what it's not. Because here's the thing. Yeah, you say 190 kids. We get it. But let's talk about impersonal. Impersonal is all students doing the same thing at the same time, the same way. We know that doesn't work. A one-size-fits-all approach, it at best will target a third. Personalization is all students getting what they need, when and where they need it to learn. But to your point, I have 190 kids. There is not one right or best way to personalize. There are effective strategies rooted in student agency, voice, choice, path, pace, place. And what we set out to do is to empower educators like you to find your way. Because when it comes down to learning, there is not just one way.
One of the ways that I was able to be successful this year is by celebrating the wins, trying to figure out what is successful about each of my kids to the best of my abilities. This is something that, of course, you bring up in the book. Why is it important for both staff and students to acknowledge those little victories? And why can that be the kindling for something that's much greater?
Yeah, I'm going to kick it off, and then Nicki does some specific things in her school to celebrate student wins. But here's the thing. There's no such thing as a small win. A win is a win. And guess what? We can't be shooting for the home run every time. That's not realistic. But what we want to do is we want to honor success. We want to honor growth. So for me, I look at, not for me, for Nicki and I, we look at student voice as a gateway, as a win to beginning that journey for personalization, empowering all students to be involved during a review of prior learning, a check for understanding, closure, where they could be responding on a whiteboard. They could be drawing on a dry erase desk. They can be using technology, but then the teacher and the leader can involve every student. What does that do? It builds community. It builds self-esteem. It really creates a culture, whether it's a classroom, school, or district. But Nicki, I want you to share, there's one unique way that you celebrate wins when kids progress at their own pace and master the standards.
So a few examples are students in 9th grade math, as they master a standard, then they ring a gong. And so we have this huge gong in the classroom and they ring it and everyone claps. But the thing is, it's so loud that everyone in the hallways hear it also. So it's like everyone's celebrating. Another way is students announcing on an intercom, as well as we have some classes have those Polaroids where they take selfies and hang it on the wall. Sometimes I bring balloons depending on the subject, and I deliver balloons to the students in front of the class, and I tie it on their wrist and they have to wear it all day long. I allow my teachers to be creative in the ways that they celebrate learning. So it's not necessarily celebrating a score or a specific skill, it's learning. So once they've proven that they've mastered a concept and they understand it, no matter what pathway they're on, or no matter what level they're on, or what grade, it's celebrated. And so throughout the day, there's a variety of ways that learning is being celebrated, but everybody in the school is part of it.
Nicki just described the personal in personalized, which is so important. Here's another thing that personalization is not. It's not about to put every kid on a device, having them use an adaptive learning tool where there's no talking and discourse. It's about those relationships. It's about the personal connections. It's about relevance. It's about building confidence.
Relevance and relationships, I think, are the two things that we need to have, whether between principal and staff, or more importantly, staff and students. And you also talk about this concept of starting with your why, and that's something that I've bought into many years ago when I first took on this middle school position. Like the first day, I just kept saying, "This is what we're doing. This is why we're here. This is how I'm going to do things. This is the reasoning for it." Nicki, talk to us a little bit about this concept of starting with your why. How do you do it? Where do you do it? When do you do it? And how impactful can this actually be if we're going to tell our students and staff why we're here?
I just decided years ago to create a hashtag why quest. And so that was a really easy way to launch it. So I had all of my staff take time in one of our beginning of the year faculty meetings to actually write down their why. And then throughout the year, all of our ELA classes and our reading classes and our writing classes, all of the students would develop their why they quest. And then throughout the day, I'm constantly run around, and I'm kind of the marketer also. So I've got my phone in the hands, and I'll grab the kids in the hall and I'll say, "Hey, let's share with everyone what's your why." So I'll be like, "Hey Johnny, what's your why?" And then I just video them. And then it's just kind of like it just spread through wildfire. Same with our parents. So if I ever have times where I'm meeting with the parents in meetings or their POCA, our peer organization, then I would ask them, what is their why? So everyone collaboratively would just develop their why, and we're constantly talking about it or posting it, or, it's just something that we did. And we still do that to this day.
So when you say why, is that why are we here? Is that why are we doing this? Is that what are the words after why?
So I feel like my teachers had a variety of reasons. They have a variety of answers. So some of them was, why did I choose to be a teacher, right? And so they dug deep and really tried to think back, what was their first reason why they went to education? Because sometimes when we're having to check all the boxes and jump through the hoops, we lose our why, right? So some of them would go back to that, where others of them would identify the things that we're doing at Quest that they really love. So I just let them kind of choose what their why was. Same as the students. Some students would focus on relationships with teachers, and that's why they're coming. They really love self-pacing, or they really love the ability to choose how to learn. Others were just personal experiences from a past school that they possibly were bullied, and why they come here and they feel accepted and loved. So everyone's was a little bit different.
And there's natural connections to personalization. When you think about from a student perspective, the most important question that they should be asking and be able to answer is, why am I learning what I'm learning? That becomes that spark, that natural inquiry to get to the, how will I use this outside of school? So that's where you start connecting it into both relevance and higher levels of cognition. And then what tells me if I'm successful? The why inspires, the why piques interest, the why motivates, but it has to be connected to the how and the what, kind of piggybacking off Simon Sinek. From a personalized aspect for adults, why do I do what I do? Or why am I doing what I'm doing the way I am? How might I do it better? And what tells me if I'm successful? That why, how, and what connect to that personal in Personalized, to motivate people to not just find their why, but to discover value in the work, to discover value, which then pulling from the work of Dan Pink and Drive, these intrinsic motivators, learning for the sake of learning being the reward, not the carrots and sticks like letters, numbers, points. But I'm sure you're probably going to ask the question, and Nicki will be chomping at the bit to respond, because her school got rid of all of those extrinsic factors, which is another key aspect of personalization.
Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Year one, I focused on culture, obviously. Year two, I knew that students were just playing the game of school. I played it, right? I'm sure you played it. I realized that all I cared about as I was going through my school years were if to get an A was 300 points, I was going to get those 300 points no matter what. I had work ethic, I had drive. I was determined to get that A, right? Learning was not the focus. Accumulating points was the focus. So when I finally had an opportunity to be a leader, and I moved from the elementary setting, which we didn't really focus a lot on points and grades in the elementary setting, right? And so when I moved to a secondary setting, and I started looking at our grade point averages, and I was realizing that students were getting A's and B's, and they were on high honor roll, but then our state test scores were really low. I was like, there's a disconnect. What's happening? This point system isn't matching what they actually know. Our grading system, what does an A really represent? Does it represent strictly academics and their knowledge on the standard? Or is it mixing in life skills and responsibility, right? So I wanted to separate that. And I also wanted to remove the points because I wanted the conversation with the students to be like ask their teacher if by chance they didn't pass something, meet with them and get a reteach and ask them to learn it a different way and have time to get to know that student and actually try multiple ways till they pass it. What I mean is I removed points, created proficiency skills, and then we had a very high standard that if they didn't reach proficiency based off our skills, then they were not allowed to move on. So they had to meet in conference with a teacher, receive feedback, receive a reteach, and then attempt to pass it again. So
Jeff, what she basically described was the reason why I had to write this book, because I've never seen a school at scale with no points, no letters, no homework, and they are one of the top achieving schools in the area in the state of Utah in junior highs. So looking at all those pieces, but the main thing was it's not one teacher. And when we talk about culture, and when we talk about change, it's where you have the majority moving together, trying to achieve a uniform goal that everybody believes in. And personalization could be that catalyst that could instill that belief because, every single student has greatness inside of them. It's a job of an educator to help them find and unleash that greatness, especially those students that make us maybe rethink our career choice. But personalization is about unlocking their potential. It's about providing tiered supports. It's about building relationships. It's about maximizing the time that we have with our students. But most importantly, it is an emphasis on learning. And learning is not linear. Learning is a journey. It is a convoluted process.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about this journey here. You're both leaders, you're both principals or have been principals. It's the first day of the school year. Nicki, walk us through that first conversation that you have. And then Eric, I'd like to ask you to do the same thing because I've seen you as a mentor, I've seen you as a friend, but I've also seen you from the teacher point of view actually doing one of my convocations, right? So I've seen you talk about the why to a bunch of strangers, but Nicki, I want you to answer this question first. What does that opening conversation start like when you start to explain the why? How much of it is your heart? How much of it is data-driven and your school improvement plan? Is it the combination? Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like from a leader point of view. How are you preparing for that first conversation with your staff when you come back to school?
I'm a firm believer that it comes from your heart. Obviously, I want data and research to back everything, but I always speak from the heart. And I feel like when they can feel your passion and your energy, then that helps the buy-in, right? So at the beginning of the school year, our main focus is finding things we value about every student. And so that's our first focus. Like we have 3 days of school, the first 3 days before we dive into procedures and expectations. It's not just the normal get to know you, share your name, what did you do over the summer? It's really taking time to meet each child, find something you value about each child as well as their interest. I've even printed out roles on clipboards and given them to my teachers in years past. So it's really important that first week to identify those things because that's how you set the culture. And that's also what they're going to use for when they plan all of their, upcoming activities and stuff. So it's finding out what you value about every kid. On the why, like talking with parents, if you're meaning like switching to personalization, all I have to say is what did 18 out of 25 mean to you as a student? What does it mean to you as a parent? It's really simple. A lot of people think it's going to be hard to get your stakeholders to buy in. All I did is ask them if they play the game of school. We all did. I asked them if the focus was on learning. I asked them, what did 18 out of 25 mean to you? I said, do you think an A at our junior high versus a school down the road, do you think the A's value the same thing? And we all agree. We all would rather focus on students being engaged, loving school, students coming to school to actually learn and being motivated intrinsically versus with points. So.
Oh, go ahead,
I
Jeff.
was going to ask, what does it look like for you, Eric, when you're walking into a school district that you're not necessarily a part of? How do you kick off the school year by showing what that why could be?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that, but I'm also going to reference back to when I was a principal because, we had to shift the paradigm, moving away from that's the way we've always done it.
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer that you lead with questions. Questions are more important than answers. There are no experts in the world. I don't care how many books they've written, how many TED Talks. There are learners and there are people that take risks. There are people willing to challenge conventional wisdom. So my main question to help people find their why is, how do you learn best? How do you describe success? What do you need to be able to move outside your comfort zone? What can you use to determine whether or not you have learned? And I think it's a lot of putting people inadvertently in the shoes of our learners, because let's be honest, the way in which many leaders facilitate faculty meetings goes against everything that we know about sound pedagogy. Stand, deliver, going through agendas, lack of discourse. Same thing with a teacher and professional development. PD is something that's often done to us. Come on, we're both from the Northeast, Jeff. We have our 2 PD days to start the year, maybe one in January. What does that do? And guess what? The people that often complain, we have to ask ourselves, if we're not happy with sit and get, if we're not happy being talked at, how is our practice not different, but more effective for those that we serve? And here's the thing with personalization. It goes back to what you said with your 190 students. Personalization isn't about more work. Nobody wants more work. Nobody wants another thing. Personalization is about more effective work. And that is about how we maximize the time that we have with our students to support those who need it the most, but also to push those kids that are already there. The why is sitting right in front of us. Why did you become a teacher, Jeff? Why did you become a teacher, Nikki? I'll tell you why I became a teacher, because teachers made a difference in my life, and I wanted to make a difference in the lives of kids. Kids aren't learning different. The environment in which they learn is dramatically different, which is why personalization is so critical now and in the future, especially, I'm going to give you an opening, Jeff, especially in an AI world.
Well, and speaking of that AI world here, we talked a lot in ISTE about writing prompts. And we talked a lot about not just giving it this thing and then having it do, but actually creating these prompts so that way the AI writes back to you and gives you feedback on things. In chapter 3 of your book, see the tie-in here, it talks all about empowering students. And for many of us, that's different. As you just mentioned, Eric, we're used to being in a faculty meeting where we're told to do something, the bell rings, thanks, see you later, have a good time. Students come in, teacher says something, students do, bell rings, it's there. But when we empower something, when we empower our students to make those choices, to choose their learning, when we empower our teachers to give a little bit of leadership back to us, or Eric, when we empower the artificial intelligence to help us out, that is 100%, I believe, the right way to do things. And it puts everybody inside that circle, not the us versus them. Nikki, talk to us a little bit about how you empower your students and, most importantly, how you empower your staff.
I try to lead by example. The way I treat my staff, I would like my staff to treat my students. For example, I have very high expectations, right? We do need to identify our power standards, create our proficiency skills, have teacher clarity, provide a pathway and a learning process for our students so they can identify where they're at, like Eric had mentioned earlier. So that is something that I'm not flexible on. We will create our proficiency skills. We will align our assessments to match our proficiency skills. Once that once we have created those, and I have all of my teachers create those. I don't buy a program that has all of the skills already made. I want my teachers to choose the power standards and create the skills themselves and identify the verbs that they want. So they're creating and designing the proficiency skills. They're taking the resources that I provided for them that they've asked me to purchase and coming up with their assessments. So they do that. But where the magic happens with the students or with the teachers is where I tell them they get to design all the practices. All I care about is if that student masters that standard. That is the role that they have. Every student needs to learn that standard. How they get there, I don't care. So with all the ideas in the book, I provide them with all those different strategies as well as tech tools that they can use, but they get to design it. And every single teacher says they feel like I treat them like a professional, and they have voice and they have choice. So now I have respect. We have a respectful relationship within each other because they feel heard. So then I tell them to do that same thing with the students. Let's not put our students in a box where everyone does the same thing on the same day. Let's give them those skills that you created. They do have to prove understanding in order to move on because learning's the focus. But let's provide a variety of ways for them to learn, a variety of ways for them to practice. Let's allow them to move at their own pace if they prove proficiency earlier than a different student. So I feel like it just kind of all goes in a circle, starting at the top.
So I'm going to add a few things on her behalf because she's being a little modest. And, this is one of the things that really stands out. And Nicki, I just want you to correct the terminology for me as I explain. You want to talk about empowerment and creating a culture for both students and teachers. She created, with a staff member, their own mastery tracker. They got rid of grades, but you need to replace it with something. Every day, she built time in the schedule where students review their trackers and they set their goals for the day. You talk about time, she gave it to them. Oh, but she didn't stop there. There's also a period called mastery minutes. Real quick, Nicki, describe mastery minutes in 2 sentences.
Students in their student prep class identify where they need a reteach, where they need additional support to learn something, right? So they're identifying that first thing in the morning, like Eric said, in their student prep class, because students need a prep class just like teachers need a prep period. Then in mastery minutes, they can choose to go to any of the core subjects for a reteach. They can go to a collaboration room to collaborate with their peers. They can go to a peer tutoring room where a National Geo Honor Society students will tutor them. They can go to a makerspace room if they have proven mastery and they just need a brain break, or academic fit room where they can go and do physical activity. So we just provide or an acceleration room that is silent. If they really want to do 2 years of math in 1 year, then they would like an additional quiet place to study. So we have collaboration, silence, one-on-one reteach, small group.
So what she just validated
that was
is
5 sentences. It was just maybe 20.
It was more like 15 or 20, but who's counting?
Know how to talk fast.
So, but what you just validated, Jeff, is she just talked about personalization. All learners getting what they need, when and where they need it. She talked about adult learners and student learners. We created in New Milford, New Jersey, our own learning academies, a school within a school model, as a way to personalize. But one other thing that she did is she built time every Friday for professional learning. And that is hands off. I was never allowed to come in on Fridays because she not only built that time in, but she was the lead co-facilitator of it. So I share those examples because when you think about leadership is not telling people what to do. It's taking them where they need to be. Leadership is not about title, position, or power. Leadership is about action. And when you think about creating a culture built on personalization, you have to take risks. You have to build in time for collaboration. You have to be willing and wanting to collaborate. There has to be feedback that is timely, specific, and targeted. And there has to be professional learning that is job embedded, ongoing, and has accountability for growth. Sorry, Jeff, that was a mouthful. But hey, you know what? I'm going to throw it back on you. As you think about all the different hats you've worn, how would some of those changes that Nicki has implemented, or what I implement as a principal, how would they impact you as an educator?
Well, I think when I'm looking through everything here, you had mentioned in the book, everybody has a unique path of getting there. And it doesn't matter how they show you that feedback. You even have listed here, make a video, write a blog, do a this, do a that. And if I'm looking at the last semester of my middle school teaching, we spent some time teaching them how to write, teaching them how to make a video, teaching them how to make a presentation. And by the time we got to that last marking period, I just said, look, here's the outline. You show me how you can answer these questions. You show me how you can figure out these prompts. And as an instructional coach, I did the same thing. We spent some time teaching all these little, individual steps, but I just let the teacher slide all around it by the time they got to the end of the year. And I just said, look, I'm here to help and facilitate. Nicki, the more I hear you talk and share your passions with this, it's very clear. You must have had an entirely amazing time being an instructional coach with your teachers.
I did. And I feel like when I moved, but what was missing was I didn't get to work with the students. And so I loved being a coach and I loved being a teacher. So right now, I feel like it's the best of both worlds because I'm one of those principals that I'm never in my office. I'm in those classrooms and in the hallways all day long. So I still get to form relationships and be the biggest cheerleader for all of my students, but I also get to be an instructional leader. And so I'm still coaching my teachers because I make sure Fridays are like my time, right? So it's like the best of both worlds. I can be a coach and a teacher, but also a principal.
One of the things that you also mentioned in the book, and I'm glad that you did, is this concept of meeting diverse needs. Everybody's coming at this in a different location. Everybody's coming at this on the different sides of, we talk a lot about the innovation curve and making sure that people are on the left and people are on the right. And how do you keep shifting them over to the left? How do you prepare for a school year knowing that you've got 90 to 100 staff members, all where they're all in their individual spots? You might have 400 to 600 students that you have to individually hit. Nicki, when you're preparing for this year, how are you making sure that your why is actually hitting all of those heartbeats?
I just think where we meet frequently and how we've set up their day, where I'm meeting with them whole group, I'm also meeting with them with their grade level as well as their subject area. I'm a million places, I will say that, but I feel like where I am part of the discussion and I collaborate with them and we solve problems together in all different areas, I feel like that helps because I'm not just in the office, throwing them out, having them solve the problems. I'm actually with them and having all those conversations. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I just think being available for them. I also truly believe I have teachers and we offer after school tutoring, after school till 4. So our contract's 8 to 4. But if a teacher needs help and I'm gone every day at 4, right? And so I just have this, I'm going to stay late with those teachers if they need the help, because they're staying after school to make sure they're meeting the needs for our students. I need to be available for them. So I'm
going to add some additional context for her, because this is what I get to see as a coach. As I work with leaders, I get to see their professional behaviors, and my job is to connect that back to effective leadership. Every new teacher that comes into that school, who is training them? Who is helping them establish that why? She is. She's helping them build the proficiency scales. You talk about availability. Maybe sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nicki, maybe sometimes to a fault, she is so available to her staff. She listens. But the other thing, when we think about leadership, people want to feel respected. People want to be heard. People want to, feel that you care about them. But the other thing, don't mistake caring for weakness, because the most effective leaders, they will model, they will be the example, but they will also hold people accountable. And that's one thing that I've seen Nicki do numerous times, is she supports, but she will roll up the sleeves and hold people accountable for growth, to set the tone that it's not a free-for-all, that it takes work, it takes dedication, but in the end, you can work, you can be committed, you can be held accountable, and you can still love your job. And I think that as leaders, another key tenet of personalization is helping educators love what they do, but they can't love what they do if they don't know why they do it. and how they can do it effectively.
It's in the interview process. Obviously, I did have teachers that were, I went to a school that was, I didn't open a school, right? So I had to transform a school. So the teachers that were there when they hired me to be the principal, they had to decide if they wanted to stay working for me once I shared my why and my vision, right? But since fast forward to now, as I'm interviewing people, the interviewing process is really important. So obviously I ask them their why, I share my why, we talk about the vision, but I don't do the interview alone. I invite anyone on my staff to every single interview. Sometimes I have 15 people, sometimes I have 5, just depending after school who's available. If we're hiring for math, I don't care if the science and the history teacher's there, because we're a team. We all follow, one of my favorite quotes is, to be the 1%. In order to be the 1%, you have to do what 99% of the world doesn't do, right? So I say that right up front in my interviews, like, we are the 1%. I've created a culture where if you're not that 1%, you feel uncomfortable on your own and you remove yourself on your own, right? Because I have a group of educators that are all here for a reason, and our why is every student, every day, no matter what. And so we just lay that out during the interview process. We model it, we speak it. We never talk ill about a student, ever. There's no whining, complaining. It's never the student's fault. If a student's not learning, what can we do better? Why did we connect with that student? You know, that's what our PLCs are about, is how do we help the student if he's not doing well in this class versus this class? So I think hopefully that helps. It's just,
how long did it take for that transformation?
Year 1, I focused on culture, and I knew that right off the bat. Removed all the desk. We purchased tables, and we did culture year 1. But starting year 2, I removed points year 2. I went all in. I just said 0.0 extra credit, 0 percentages. Our focus is learning. We're moving from teacher-centered to student-centered. And then each year we took on a different aspect. We actually started with proficiency skills and identifying the competencies and the standards. Then we worked on self-pacing and then adding voice and choice. So we kept adding things each year, but we did remove points right off the bat. And obviously we had to create our mastery tracker that I designed to fit our students and created the schedule that we did. So that was kind of the first couple years, but we are continuously trying to improve every single year. And that's why I hired Eric, is I had felt I couldn't find anyone in Utah that we could go observe and learn from. And so it's kind of at this part where I felt like we were doing really well. We were giving tours, but I just needed to go to that next level. And I was fortunate enough to listen to him speak and meet him. And so I thought maybe I'll bring him in and see what he thinks, because he's traveled the world, right?
And what does that look like for you in the context of your whole school district? I was assuming that not every school in your district is moving in that same direction. What is it like in your principal meetings when everyone's kind of comparing notes and seeing what's going on in everybody's buildings?
Well, I'm fortunate. People say that I'm lucky because charters can make change faster, right? But I'm going to share a couple things that I think people forget about charters. So I am fortunate, and I am the LEA. So I am the district, right? And the principal. I do have a school board. But I want to tell you something that people forget about. We are all on a 1-year contract. There is no 10-year. We are a business. In order to stay afloat, students need to choose our school.
It's not job for life, Jeff.
People have to drive their kids and drop them off and pick them up. So in order to stay afloat, students need to learn and love school. Our test scores have to be above the state and above the community schools. Or why would someone stop putting their kid on the bus going to the local community school, right? So maybe I don't have as many hoops to jump through, say, as a district or other junior highs, but I have to meet the needs of every single parent that's making a sacrifice to bring their kid to Quest versus put them on the bus, if that makes sense.
Different constraints, but you still, again, we all have different challenges across the world, and those might look different, but in the end, it's, are we willing to challenge the status quo, to create a new status quo that's going to benefit everyone in the system?
I want to wrap up today with something that I loved about your book, which was called Embracing the Journey. And you had mentioned earlier, Eric, this is not a straight line. Everything's a little wavy. Everything's a little bit messy. In what ways can we embrace the journey? And in what ways can we allow that journey to help us shape our whys moving forward?
We need to show ourselves more grace. There is no such thing as a best way or necessarily a right way. There are effective ways. we like to challenge the term best practice. If there were best practices, we'd all be doing with a high degree of fidelity, getting amazing results. No, they're effective practices. And we talk about those wins. A win could be a teacher consistently integrating closure through the amplification of student voice. So as we look at the journey has to be personal. We have to be willing to fail forward. We have to be open to feedback. Everyone says they want feedback. Are those people actually open to it? And then will they act on it? The journey is about the people. Education is not a one-person event. We have to be willing to bounce ideas off one another. We have to be willing to collaborate. We also have to be humble, and, when I think about what that means, it's okay to say, I don't know, I need help. Those two explanations are critical in the journey because there is no perfection in education. There's no perfect teacher. There's no perfect school district leader, and there is no perfect way to personalize. I'm a little disappointed that Nicki did not share her trademark little explanation about moving away from cookie cutter curriculum and approaches. It's something she talks about all the time.
All the time.
And what we want people to understand about the journey is it's your journey, everybody. But don't make that journey alone.
If you provide lots of opportunities where your teachers collaborate with the leader as well as with each other, then they're going to feel comfortable to ask questions. They're going to feel comfortable to fail because they're working as a team, right? So setting the stage that way. Same as in the classroom. If the teacher's available to work one-on-one and in small group, will those students feel comfortable asking questions? Will they realize it's okay to fail because the teacher's going to be there to provide them feedback to help them grow and improve, right? So it's just shifting the environment and making sure everyone feels safe and loved and heard and that it's okay to fail.
The book is called Personalized, Meeting the Needs of All Learners. I love the story of Nicki. You brought Eric in to help you out with your school district, and then suddenly this relationship of authorships form. I got to ask you two questions here. And Eric, you're next. What did you learn about Eric throughout the journey of writing this book with him that you might not have known when you were just working together as a coach in a school district?
Eric's a fabulous mentor. First off, I have to say that he has really been a mentor to me in all of these, in every experience, from being a leader as well as a writer. So Eric has really been working with me on, I'm a rambler, as you can say. So I have a lot to say, and I would just write and ramble. So he really helped me with the editing and the revising and getting to the point and meeting and writing a piece of creating work that's for an audience for everyone, not just a targeted audience, like for all teachers and for all leaders. So he's been a great example in teaching me how to do that. But really what I've learned from him is he's very organized and structured, and he just loves everything a certain way. So I don't know. I learn from him every day. I can't just say one thing.
My follow-up question is, what have you learned about yourself through this book writing process?
These are tough questions. Let's see. It really was hard. It was harder than receiving my master's degree. I can say that because I have a lot of energy and a lot of voice. So I had to really write it and then rewrite it in a different way. I don't know. I learned that I have passion and I really want to make an impact in a larger community, right? And I learned that it's very important through writing. You can do that. He's also helped me to where I finally started a blog, and I'm going to start blogging. So I think what I've learned is he's told me not to just be like this little hidden gem in West Haven, Utah, just to get my voice heard, to make a bigger impact with a larger community, because he's helped provide confidence in me that what I'm doing is right and that I should share it with everyone to help everyone, take the risk and do it.
I love that answer. Eric, I'll ask you a similar question, then I have one follow-up for you here. What have you learned about Nicki now that you guys are colleagues, not just coach and school district?
I've learned that she truly is open to feedback. She didn't truly want me initially in her school. And to be willing to let down the guard and be open to feedback, and it was not always smooth sailing, Jeff. What you're seeing between us now, sometimes feedback is more on a critical end. And, but one thing I know, whether it was through coaching, she got a lot of feedback from me, maybe a lot of earfuls from me about during the writing process.
The writing.
But even now, when we're done events like this, I get on Voxer and I give her feedback. And I know she won't take it personally. So, I'm going to ask, you want to know what I learned from this? Is how patient I am.
My God.
How patient I am. I'm joking. But, we talk about, just all those things. I think what I've really learned through this process, and one of the reasons that I feel that, being that I've done this for a while, I need to pay it forward. I need to pass the baton. I know that I am not the expert. I know there are areas that, and Nicki's facilitating work in numerous districts on my behalf. She is doing things that, could I do it? Yes. Am I the most equipped? No. Being able to be that way, and I do not like to give up control. Patience was more of a joke, sort of, but she's helped me give up control, which has made me more laser focused at building my consultancy.
The book is called Personalize, Meeting the Needs of All Learners, available from Connect Ed Publishing. Eric, where can we go to learn more about the great things that you're going to be doing this year?
My goodness, where can you not find them? I'm on every social media tool. You can go to ericsheninger.com. We're always sharing updates on the book, but ericsheninger.com is the one. Hey, most people are not interested. But if you want a one-stop shop of ericsheninger.com.
Nicki, I'm going to give you the last words. You can plug your website, you can plug your social media, but look right at the camera and talk to the educational leaders of today. What do you want to tell them?
Thank you for choosing to be educators. And I just really want you to fall in love with your job. And I want to help prevent teacher burnout. So hopefully you love our book and you can provide you with some quick and easy strategies that you can jump in this new school year and feel happy and empowered to make a difference with your kiddos.
What's your website?
NickiSlaugh.com.
She is Nicki Slaugh. He is Eric Sheninger. And I want to say thank you both for coming on the show. Please come back on later on this year. I would love to continue this conversation. And if you're an educational leader out there, would love to invite you on. Maybe we can have a large group conversation all about how you guys can tell your why to your staff and to your students. And that wraps up this episode of Digital Learning today. I want to say thank you guys so much for checking this out. Of course, you can find out all of our other shows over on teachercast.net/podcast and check out this on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you guys get your podcasts. And so on behalf of Nicki and Eric and everybody here on TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.